There is this incredibly persistent cultural cliche we all grew up with, like the image of the lone genius.
Oh, right, the whole, the Isaac Newton sitting under the apple tree thing.
Yeah, exactly. You picture Newton in this isolated orchard, an apple falls on his head, and just boom, in a flash of private brilliance, he understands the ultimate secrets of gravity.
Right, and he's just there by himself.
But imagine for a second that Newton just, I don't know, smiled, understood the entire universe, and then never wrote it down. Like never told a single soul.
Wow, yeah.
If a genius discovers the fundamental truth of the universe, but that knowledge literally never leaves their own head, the question is, does that scientific knowledge actually exist?
That is, it's a question that feels almost like a Zen koan, right? Like if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it.
Exactly.
But when you apply that to the actual history of science, it completely shatters our standard definition of what a fact even is. Because, we love the comforting idea that truth is this objective thing that just exists out there, like buried treasure.
Right. You just dig it up, you're holding it, and boom, you have the truth.
Exactly. But the source material we are looking at today argues that being right, like just having the truth in your head, is entirely insufficient.
And this brings us to the actual paper we're diving into today. It's an academic paper titled The New Sociology of Science as the Foundation of the Epistemic Process by Boris Kriger. And the mission for our deep dive today is to really completely reframe how you, the listener, think about what knowledge actually is.
Yeah, it's a profound shift in perspective.
We're going to explore why being right isn't enough, how ideas survive or die in society, and how artificial intelligence is radically rewiring the whole definition of scientific truth right now. Okay, let's unpack this. Kriger builds his argument by going all the way back to the 19th century philosopher Auguste Comte.
Right, Comte. He's famous for creating this hierarchy of the sciences, basically a ladder of human inquiry.
Yeah, and the canonical reading of Comte's ladder starts at the very bottom with mathematics, which is, the simplest and most general, and then you step up to astronomy.
Then physics, chemistry, biology, and finally at the very top, like the absolute apex of human inquiry, sociology.
Right. The traditional view places sociology as this capstone science, basically because human society is the most complex thing to study. It relies on all those physical and biological sciences beneath it.
What's fascinating here is that Krieger's paper steps in and proposes a completely inverted structural reading.
Yeah, this part threw me for a loop.
He argues that sociology isn't the capstone at the top of the ladder. It is the foundation the entire ladder is resting on.
Which, that sounds totally counterintuitive at first. Like, sociology is the foundation for physics. How does that work?
Well, think about what physics actually requires to function in the real world. For the claims of physics, or biology for that matter, to even exist as a science, a collective social apparatus has to already be in place.
Okay, I see what you mean.
If there's no community to verify or store or transmit a physical law, then that law doesn't persist. It just vanishes with the person who thought of it.
Right, like our Newton example.
Exactly. Therefore, sociology, which is the study of those very collective conditions, has to be the foundation that allows any other science to leave a permanent mark on human history in the first place.
Which brings us to a concept in the paper that I have to aggressively push back against on behalf of anyone listening who loves math. The author introduces this thing called the Social Indistinguishability Theorem, and its Einstein corollary.
Oh yeah, this is a controversial one.
He claims that a thrice Einstein, basically someone 3 times as smart as Albert Einstein, who comes up with brilliant theories but is totally isolated from a community, is indistinguishable from a non-Einstein. And I really struggle with this. Math is a universal absolute.
I know, it feels wrong.
Right? Like 2 + 2 = 4, even if the universe is completely empty. If I solve a complex, universe-altering math proof in my private diary, it is still undeniably true, even if I burn the diary. Are we just, collapsing the noble pursuit of epistemology into a literal popularity contest?
That instinctive pushback makes perfect sense. I had the same reaction. But it conflates 2 entirely different things: ontological reality and epistemological science.
Okay, break that down for me.
The paper does not deny the reality of the universe,
Right.
Nor does it deny your private cognitive state. If you solve the proof in your head, you had a real subjective experience of solving it. That happened.
Okay, so I am a genius in this scenario.
Sure, you're a genius. But your private cognitive state is not scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge is a composite property. It's humanity's active ledger. Think of an external observer, like, say, a historian 100 years from now, looking at the evidence through a likelihood ratio argument.
Meaning, the historian is basically comparing the probability of finding evidence of my secret genius versus the probability of finding absolutely no evidence.
Precisely that mechanic.
Eh.
If you have a thought, but you never write it down, never tell anyone, never pass it through a social channel, the probability of a historian finding a trace of that thought is literally zero. Mathematically, if the evidence is zero, the hypothesis that you are a secret genius and the hypothesis that you are completely ordinary produce the exact same observable data.
Because there's nothing to observe.
Right. So to the active historical record of science, a thrice Einstein without a community literally does not exist.
Okay, so private genius isn't enough to create knowledge, which forces us to look at the machinery itself. Like, what exact mechanisms are required to turn a private thought into an actual historical scientific fact?
Kriger defines this through what he calls the composite knowledge system. Scientific knowledge doesn't live in the individual alone. It is a state of a composite system made up of 4 elements.
And those are the individual, the artifacts they create, the community they interact with, and the transmission channels between them.
Exactly. For an idea to survive and become knowledge, it must flow through 4 distinct channels of persistence.
I was reading this part of the paper, and I realized this actually maps perfectly onto the music industry. It makes it so much easier to visualize.
Oh, I like that. Run with it.
Okay, so picture an idea as a new song. Channel 1 is inscription. In music, this is writing the song and recording the demo tape. You have to get it out of your head and onto a physical medium.
Right. And in science, that is writing the manuscript, gathering the data, making the chart. It's the first transformation from a neural state in your brain to a symbolic record on paper.
Exactly. Then you have channel 2, which is evaluation. In music, you take that demo tape and you play it for an A&R rep or a producer at a label.
And in science, this is peer review, or presenting at conferences. The community has to possess the shared symbolic language to evaluate your claim, actually test it, and decide if it holds weight.
Right, they have to know how to listen to the music. Then you need channel 3, institutionalization. This is when your song gets picked up by a major label, it hits the Billboard charts, is playing in every grocery store, it just becomes part of the culture.
Yeah, scientifically, this is when a concept makes it into the university textbooks. It's in the standard curricula, the encyclopedia entries. It is stabilized as a known fact.
And finally, channel 4 is criticizability. The retrospective music reviews come out, people debate if the album has aged poorly, which keeps the music from becoming this unquestionable cult.
Which is crucial. Public criticizability keeps science from becoming dogma. If a claim is institutionalized but placed entirely beyond revision, it ceases to be scientific knowledge. It just becomes a religion.
When you look at history through the lens of those 4 channels, you start to really see where catastrophic breakdowns happen. The paper gives 2 incredibly stark examples of channel failure, and they are heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. The first one is Gregor Mendel, the father of modern genetics.
Yeah, Mendel essentially recorded the greatest demo tape of his era. He succeeded brilliantly at Channel 1. In 1866, he inscribed his findings about inherited traits in pea plants, and he published them. He literally mailed the demo tape out to the major labels.
But he failed completely at Channels 2, 3, and 4.
Because nobody understood it.
Right. He failed because the human A&R reps of his time lacked the framework to hear the music. The community of geneticists simply didn't exist yet. He sent his work to this famous botanist who just dismissed it because it didn't fit the prevailing theories of hybridization.
So for, 35 years, Mendel's results were practically invisible?
35 years. It wasn't until 1900 when a community had finally formed that was capable of understanding his mathematical framework that his inscribed work was rediscovered and activated as actual knowledge.
So during those 35 years, despite having the literal truth written on paper, Mendel was indistinguishable from a non-Mendel to the scientific world.
Exactly. The second example the paper gives is Ignaz Semmelweis.
Oh, this one is so frustrating to read about.
In 1847, he discovers that doctors washing their hands with chlorinated lime drastically reduces mortality rates in maternity wards.
Which is just objectively true. He succeeds at Channel 1, he writes it down, he even attempts Channel 2, presenting it to the medical establishment in Vienna. He basically plays the demo live for the executives.
And the medical establishment actively rejected it. They lacked the conceptual framework to understand why hand washing worked.
Because they didn't know about germs yet.
Right. The germ theory of disease wouldn't be consolidated by Pasteur and Koch for another couple of decades, so the medical community just saw Semmelweis's hand-washing as this unmotivated, superstitious ritual. He suffered what the paper calls a social penalty for premature correctness.
Premature correctness. He was cognitively correct, but socially rejected. His idea failed to institutionalize, and because the four channels are connected, failure in one accelerates failure in the others. The medical community alienated him, which shut down the institutionalization channel entirely. So what does this all mean for us today?
Well, both Mendel and Semmelweis were bottlenecked by human gatekeepers. Gatekeepers who had to physically read, comprehend, and evaluate their work against the dominant paradigms of their time. The classical sociology of science always assumed these four channels operated in sync.
Right, like an assembly line. You write a paper, it gets reviewed, it gets published, it gets debated. It was a synchronized, very human ladder.
But Mendel and Semmelweis lived in an era where evaluation took months or even years. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what happens when the gatekeepers isn't human and can process 10,000 papers a second?
Yeah, the modern shift. Because the internet, preprint servers like Arpsorv, and social media have completely desynchronized this process. We have fundamentally shattered the speed and structure of those classical channels.
Kriger calls this the algorithmic disruption. And because of this desynchronization, he introduces a new sociological category, the asymmetric carrier state.
What does that mean in practice?
Today, you can have massive channel 1 output. You can publish 50 highly detailed preprints, thousands of tweets, endless long-form blog posts, but you might have absolutely zero channel 2 evaluation, no formal peer review whatsoever.
This leads right into what the paper calls production rate supremacy, which is just an amazing term. It's this visual of a creator pumping out ideas and papers so incredibly fast that the formal peer review channel is essentially evaluating a ghost.
Yeah, a past version of the author.
Exactly. If a researcher produces new inscribed units far faster than the human channel's response time, a rejection from a journal arrives after the author has already published 20 more papers building on the rejected one. The institutional rejection just becomes a vanishing fraction of their total output. The sheer volume crushes the human evaluation channel.
And nature abhors a vacuum. If traditional human gatekeepers cannot process all this information, something else steps in to do it.
And this is the bombshell of the paper.
Artificial intelligence, large language models, and search engines are stepping in and acting as a new accelerated Channel 3. They are becoming the new mechanism for institutionalization.
Okay. To bring our music analogy into the modern era, if Channel 2 evaluation is the record label gatekeepers, algorithmic institutionalization is like a song going instantly viral on TikTok or SoundCloud.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
The artist bypasses the A&R reps completely. The AI search engines are the algorithm for scientific facts now. If enough people upload preprints, the algorithm makes it the new consensus, even if the academic record labels never approved it.
Historically, for an idea to become part of the operative public knowledge, it had to be cited by established scientists, put into curricula, taught in universities. Now we have this algorithmic channel. And the mechanics of how LLMs operate make this basically inevitable.
Because they just predict the next word based on data volume, right?
Exactly. LLMs function on token prediction based on semantic weight in their training data. If an outsider operating entirely outside the university system continuously publishes coherent preprints, Medium articles, and press releases, the LLMs ingest all of that text.
And the author refers to this as algorithmic contamination, which, I mean, it sounds super sinister, but the paper stresses it is actually morally neutral. It is just a mechanical exploit of the composite system.
Yes, it's just how the math works.
If you continuously flood the algorithmic pipeline with semantically consistent formulations, you alter the probability vectors within the LLM. So when someone, prompts the AI on that topic, the AI predicts the next token based on the heavy weight of your flooded data, and it spits your knowledge back out to the public.
You have entirely bypassed the university curriculum committee. You achieve institutional presence without institutional permission.
Wow.
And an interesting asymmetry emerges here. People use AI to generate text at massive scale, writing papers in minutes. But they almost never use that same AI to audit their own work, to ask the AI to dismantle their argument or find logical flaws.
Right, so we have the superpowered Channel 1 production with almost no self-imposed Channel 2 evaluation. We're just shouting into the void, but the void is organizing it into textbooks.
Exactly.
But despite the lack of self-evaluation, this algorithmic channel gives outsiders a really potent tool to bypass stalled scientific institutions. They can attack some of the most stubborn mysteries in science.
And the paper provides a deep dive into one specific case study to show how an outsider might use this desynchronized ecosystem to break through a stagnant field.
The hard problem of consciousness.
Yes. The author actually corresponded with David Chalmers, who is arguably the most famous living philosopher of consciousness regarding this exact framework.
And the hard problem of consciousness is a perfect test case, right? Because the unitary concept of consciousness, this idea that there is a single, mysterious, phenomenal feeling of what it is like to be alive, is highly socially persistent.
Right. Channels 1 through 4 talk about it constantly. Books are written, countless conferences are held.
But scientifically, it is completely stuck. We aren't making any progress on how the brain actually produces it because we're using a vague umbrella term. We argue endlessly over whether an AI is conscious or if an animal is conscious, and we just end up spinning our wheels.
So Krieger's proposed solution is a panel replacement. The argument is that the word consciousness conflates way too many different things. We need to replace that single umbrella term with a panel of operationally distinct concepts that a neuroscientist or a computer scientist can actually measure in a lab.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of asking, is it conscious, we break it down into specific, testable properties. Like reportability. Can the system produce a verifiable report about its internal state?
Right, and global availability is information from one subsystem accessible to other subsystems.
Self-modeling, does it maintain a representation of its own state distinct from the environment? And wakeful responsiveness.
Now, academic philosophy departments have debated the umbrella term of consciousness for decades, and shifting that paradigm through the slow, generational turnover in university departments could literally take a century.
Because the human gatekeepers are too slow.
Exactly. But algorithmic contamination offers a structural intervention. An outsider can use the AI channel to force this new panel replacement into the mainstream much faster.
So by systematically flooding preprint servers and blogs with papers that use the panel terms like reportability and global availability instead of the word consciousness, the outsider alters the LLM training data.
Yes. And then when students or journalists ask the AI about consciousness, the algorithm starts returning the decomposed panel framework instead of the old philosophical debate.
The outsider bypasses the academic gridlock completely and forces a new operational framework into the public eye.
It changes the entire landscape of how human knowledge evolves. Knowledge is no longer dependent solely on the slow synchronization of human inscription, human evaluation, and human institutionalization.
It really makes you look at your own daily life, and your own industry, because we all deal with broken evaluation channels in our jobs. Ideas get buried because management is too slow to evaluate them, or because the prevailing corporate culture lacks the framework to understand a new process.
Just like Semmelweis.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how much knowledge we are just sitting on because the traditional human gatekeepers are a bottleneck. But if the evaluation channels in your industry are broken, this algorithmic disruption shows that there are new ways to push ideas into the institutional fabric.
And this raises an important question. As we look to the horizon, this framework forces us to confront a rather chilling trajectory.
Okay, lay on me.
Well, if artificial intelligence is increasingly serving as the channel 3 for institutionalizing human knowledge, it's ingesting the massive flood of channel 1 production, synthesizing it, and feeding it back to the public, it is only a matter of time before the system shifts again. What happens when the AI inevitably becomes the primary evaluator of that knowledge as well?
Wait, so taking over channel 2 entirely?
Exactly. If human peer review is already collapsing under the sheer volume of production rate supremacy, AI evaluation is the logical endpoint. Think about it. An AI generates the hypothesis. A second AI evaluates its logical coherence against the global dataset. A third AI institutionalizes it, making it instantly accessible to any human prompt.
So it's just machines talking to machines.
Right. If the entire process of verifying and transmitting a physical law is handled by algorithms, does the composite knowledge system that defines scientific truth still require humans to function at all? Or do we just become the lone geniuses in the orchard, completely isolated from the very channels of persistence we created?
That is a staggering thought to leave on. The realization that we built the system that makes truth real, and we might eventually just lock ourselves out of it.
It's definitely something to chew on.
Thank you so much to everyone for joining us on this deep dive. Take a hard look at the ideas you are holding on to, and remember to keep questioning the structures of the knowledge around you.